Lesson 7, Portrait Photo. As we move along, building our knowledge on photography, we reach the point to compose our portraits. As you compose your portraits, be aware not only of your subject, but of what's surrounding them. If there are elements in your frame that distract, eliminate them. Fill your frame only with what is relevant and fits with your intention for the portrait you are creating. Here are some methods a portrait photographer can practice to isolate their subjects. Get in close. Using a long focal length or moving in close to your subject, you can fill the frame with their face. Having nothing else in view is the boldest photography composition technique you can ever apply. Move your subject. If you prefer a portrait that's not so tight and the background contains distractions, move your subject. By positioning your subject in even a slightly different location, you can make use of a completely different background. Look around and observe the location where you want to make the portrait. See if there is somewhere you can compose a picture so the background is clear and your subject is in isolation from it. Empty walls, a fence, and even a clear sky can serve as backgrounds that make your subject stand out. You may be surprised at times how easy it is to find a clean and clear background for a portrait once you start looking. Of course, you can always move yourself. Good composition in photography often requires that you move around and study your subject from many angles. Only taking a photograph from the first point of view you think of will not always bring about the best results in isolating subjects. Even a small change in your position will make a difference in how you see your subject in relation to the background. As you look at your subject, stand in different positions. Look at what you can see in the background and how isolation of the person you're photographing is possible. Get lower to the ground or a little higher up if you can. Make time to have a good look at the options for what you will see in the background. Subject isolation photography requires that you find a good place to capture your photos from. You want somewhere there's nothing behind your subject that will compete with them in your composition. Choose the right focal length. A bit more complicated, however, also important. Portrait photography is most often done with a focal length of 50 mm or longer. The longer lens the photographer chooses, isolation becomes easier. A longer lens means you take a portrait, you'll see less of the background. With a telephoto, your subject will be in isolation because of the narrow field of view that these lenses have. Use a longer focal length. The longer the focal length you use, the shallower the depth of field will appear to be in your photos. Using a 24 mm with the aperture set to f2.8, the background will not look as blurred as if you use an 105 mm at f2.8. The principle applies to any aperture setting you choose. With a longer lens, the background will appear more blurred. The wider the aperture you can use, the shallower the depth of field will appear. So lenses with the widest apertures make it more likely that you can isolate your subject in this way. When it comes to using light, there are a number of different ways it can be used in photography. The direction, hardness or softness and temperature of light can all have an impact on the mood and feeling of an image. Side light, for example, evokes feelings of romance and nostalgia, whereas light from below creates a sense of terror. Hard shadows create more of a sense of drama than soft shadows, and cool color tones convey more negative emotions than warm light. Do observe how the angle of the light and where the light is placed overhead, eye level or under affect the feeling and the mood of the photo, even though we're using the same model. As photographers, there are a number of different ways we can control light to help us get the result we want. One of these ways is planning. By planning ahead, you'll be able to get the best type of light for your shot. For example, if you want warm golden light with long shadows, then sunrise or sunset is when you should be shooting. If you're wanting a more subtle light with softer shadows, try and wait for a cloudy day. Another way to control natural light is through the use of reflectors. These simple accessories can be great for adding more light to your subject, or if you use a dark reflector, darkening your scene. There's also the option to use flash. By using simple lighting like speed lights, you can get quick creative results. Diffusion material is another useful tool for controlling light. This spreads your light and softens the shadow, very similar to clouds on an overcast day. Practice, practice, practice. In this lesson, we invite you to try and perform this exercise. Pick a friend and try to photograph his or her portrait in different environments. Try to apply everything you learned so far and see how the difference of placing the light, the angles, your position affects the mood of the photo. Enjoy the process.